Hello, my name is Precious Vines Harris, and I am the Single Maven. Thank you so much for joining me today. The Single Maven is a brand devoted specifically to empowering single Christian women in their singleness. The title of today's blog post is Wait, What? Black women plus white men equals lower divorce rate. So, we're going to talk about some surprising statistics I actually stumbled upon recently while just actually surfing the net. So, we're going to have a real conversation today, and this is one that actually will challenge you because it talks about the concept of interracial dating and statistics as it relates to Black women and white men. So, let's talk about it. So, when we're talking about this conversation, first and foremost, I must lay out the disclaimer that I am by no means a matchmaker, right? I'm not here to tell you who you should marry. This conversation is simply to open the door to having a conversation about looking at how you view your options in dating and how you potentially can expand your options as it relates to your potential partner, right? Because marriage is a big decision. It's not one that you should take lightly. And I firmly believe that anytime you are considering marriage, you should definitely pray about it and consult wise counsel, right? But let's look at some statistics as it relates to interracial dating, specifically between Black women and white men, right? And this is according to studies that I've reviewed from the Pew Research and other sources that state that Black women who marry white men have some of the lowest divorce rates. And this is really in comparison to white women and white men and Black women and Black men, right? This is very surprising. They looked at a 10-year time span as it looked to comparing and contrasting same race couples and interracial couples, right? But with Black women and white men, the statistics showed that there was a 44, less likely chance of divorce with a Black woman who married a white man versus a white woman who married a white man over the same 10-year time span, right? So 44% less in the likelihood of having a divorce, I think is very high, considering the divorce rate is probably about 50% now, right? So any probability that you can lower your chances of getting divorced when you're married should be looked at as it relates to you having longevity in marriage. Because a lot of times as a single person, you only want to look at the fact that you want to get to marriage, right? But at the end of the day, it's very important that you are empowered not only in your singleness, but in your marriage after the fact, because you want to make sure that your marriage is something that's long lasting, right? There's no need to actually pray for something to get it and then you're not able to maintain it, right? So you need to know specifically what your chances are as it relates to statistics, right? And these are based upon studies with these actual type couples, all right? So these are some of the other statistics that I found as well. It says that only about 12% of Black women marry interracially. So that does show you that it's a lower percentage of Black women actually thinking about, dating interracially and them actually doing it. In addition to that, this is a surprising statistic. It says that Black women who never marry is around 49%. And this is around 2022. So the stats could be higher or lower, but my guesstimate is it's probably higher because it was 37% in 1990 of Black women never marrying. That statistic rose to 49% in 2022, right? So these statistics show you that there is a disparity, number one, in the amount of Black women who marry, right? Number two, in the interracial dating statistics, Black women actually considering dating interracially. And then number three, the statistics that show that if a Black woman does consider dating and then marrying someone outside of her race, there's a high probability that that marriage will last if it's with a white man, right? That's a lot to digest. And I was really surprised when I was looking at it because I was really just surfing in there. I don't even remember what I was looking at, to be honest with you. I think I was thinking about a movie I watched and just thinking about just researching some of the characters because they were an interracial couple. And I just stumbled upon this research. But I thought that it would be pertinent to share to those of you who are single, right? And thinking about who you should date in the future. Fact of the matter is, God can have anyone in any package, right, for you as a potential partner. But we want to talk about specifically how you as a Black woman, if you are a Black woman, should consider your options, right? And these are some questions that I have here in my notes that I want you to think about. Number one, are you open to the person that God may send, even if they don't come in the package that you expect? That package could not necessarily just be with race. It could be with other things. It could just be height. It could be weight. It could be race. It could be even skin tone, even in the same race, right? It could be how much money that person makes or where they live, what type of family they come from, how many kids they have, all of those things, right? But the question I'm asking you, number one, is are you open to the person God may send you, even if they don't come in the same package that you envision, right? Number two, what are your thoughts as it relates to potential bias as it pertains to interracial dating? Because sometimes when you look at the aspect of interracial dating, you may think that you may be open, but you have to look at the longevity of it. Because just because you're dating someone and you may not navigate hurdles does not mean you may not navigate hurdles after you're married, right? So you have to think about if there's potential bias from your side, but also from others. How will you deal with that if there are other people in your life, your family, your friends, or even people in your community? When you go out, are you comfortable with it, right? Those are questions you should ask yourself. And then, are you shocked by these statistics? I would be interested to find out what you all thought the statistic was as it relates to Black women marrying white men. What do you think the divorce rates were? Because I was really surprised at that, right? And in addition to that, I want to talk about some things that we should look at as it relates to potential marriage partners, right? Because dating is, of course, utilized as if you're essentially looking for an exclusive relationship that leads to marriage. Dating allows you to meet with people to see if you're compatible, to get to know that person, all of the above. But at the end of the day, I do encourage you, by no means am I a matchmaker, you have to be comfortable with who you date, right? If you know deep down inside that interracial dating, based upon your experiences or things that you think you may encounter, you're not comfortable with that, or you don't necessarily think that it will be right based upon your own beliefs, that's totally fine, right? In this blog, I want to open up the possibility for those of you who have been thinking about the fact that you're single, you want to get married, it may still be a long time in the making, and you're trying to figure out what options may exist. What am I not thinking about? This is something you should think about, right? Considering the fact that the package you may have or think that God has for you as it relates to marriage does not look specifically how you think it will look. Because even if you marry someone within your race, 9 times out of 10, it's probably going to not look verbatim how you think it will look, right? Even myself, I love my husband, but would I have actually said, okay, this is the perfect person from the offset, not knowing him? Not necessarily so, right? But that doesn't mean that I was not open to getting to know that person. And then based upon my experiences in previous relationships at that time period in my life, to be honest with you, I was a little bit jaded, right? So my own experiences being jaded by other relationships, I wasn't as open to receiving his interest at that time. And that's not a slight to say that I wasn't totally interested. It was to say that my heart was not ready, right? So you do have to ask yourself as a single person, is your heart ready for whatever God may have for you, even if it doesn't look exactly how you would have for it to look, right? And that's not necessarily just that looks. It could be finances. It could be education. It could be that person's background. It could be any of those things. It could be physical characteristics, right? But at the end of the day, man looks at the outward appearance, but God looks at the heart. And I think that's important to note as well, because at the end of the day, you have to look at a person's heart as it relates to potential pairing. If you want to be in an exclusive relationship that leads to marriage, right, for the long term, you have to consider what that person's heart looks like, right? So I want to actually kind of bring this a little bit to a close, but I want to give you some homework, some things to think about, right? First and foremost, I think it's important to acknowledge that if you do consider interracial dating within our community and our world at large, you do have to be mindful of how you may be received, right? Marriage requires sacrifice no matter what race your partner may be, right? That is something I have talked about in previous blog posts, is the fact that marriage requires sacrifice, hard work, and you have to keep God first and foremost in your marriage, right? So having a partner of any race requires that you put in the hard work, the dedication, all of those things. You have to be invested in your marriage for it to work, right? But I do want to ask you this question. Are you limiting yourself, right? Are you limiting yourself because you're looking at it from the standpoint of, I have to have a partner that has the same race as me, right? I have to have a partner that makes this amount of money, or a partner that comes from this specific environment, right? Or a partner that has 0 kids, or only kids by one person, or whatever the case may be. It could be various things that you're looking at. But are you limiting yourself because you're looking at specifically having this box, right? The person has to fit this box. And if they don't fit this box, you're not interested in them. Are you cutting off possibilities due to what others may think, right? I asked you that question before. I want you to really think about it this week. Have you considered dating people that you normally would not date? And it doesn't necessarily have to be if you're a black woman, a white man, or vice versa. It could be Asian. It could just be someone that's shorter than you, right? Sometimes women don't necessarily want to date someone that's shorter than them because they don't think that, is physically attractive, or what people may think. But at the end of the day, it's important for you to know that the person you're dating, if they're in it for the long haul, their heart is ready to receive love and they're truly invested in the partnership. That is something that really, at the end of the day, you have to look at holistically as it relates to potential marriage, right? And to summarize all of this, I will continue to put the disclaimer, right? The Single Maven is not a matchmaker. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just giving you possibilities or options of things that you should think about. Because at the end of the day, right, if you're dating outside of your race, that does not mean that you're giving up on your culture, that you're not black anymore. It just means that you're expanding your options. And at the end of the day, you should expand your options if you're looking for love, right? So these are some things I'm going to give you as takeaways. I want you to really think about this week. Write down 3 qualities that you would like in a husband that has nothing to do with race, right? If they were black, white, Asian, Hispanic, Native American, whatever. What are 3 qualities that you would look for in a husband that has nothing to do with race, right? Second question I want you to ask yourself this week. Are you being too restrictive as it relates to how you imagine your future spouse? Have you put so many boundaries and borders and put a box around this specific thing that you're looking for that you've actually placed out potential eligible bachelors because they don't fit that box? Something to think about. And this is a prayer. Ask God to open your heart to receive the love that He has for you, even if it looks different than you expect, right? Because at the end of the day, you want to be able to see these things through God's eyes, so you will be a little bit wiser in your choices because God knows what you need and He knows what your future is going to look like, right? So drop down in the comments and let me know what you think about this, guys. Are you surprised by those statistics? What do you think of some of the reasons that black women marrying white men has a lower divorce rate overall? And also, have you considered interracial dating? Why or why not? And then explain, if you feel like sharing or comfortable with sharing, what are some of your experiences, right? As always, I thank you so much for joining me today. If you've not done so, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. I'm still working on increasing my numbers. Like this post and share with a friend. Until next time.